On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at the Plymouth Prowler, a vehicle that graphically demonstrates what happens if you raid the corporate parts bins, stir in a little imagination and a great deal of ingenuity. Prowler's largest single unique component is its all-aluminum perimeter frame. As well as supporting the vehicle and its running gear, the frame acts as a test bed for new technologies. One of the problems presented Chrysler was, how do you take a front-wheel drive powertrain and adapt it to Prowler? The answer is surprisingly simple. You mount the engine here, you go back to the back wheels, and you put a traditional front-wheel drive transaxle at the back of the car. You then link the two with a torque tube. Now you've taken a front drive powertrain and adapted it to the hot rod norm, rear-wheel drive. Yet another problem for Prowler: how on earth do you accommodate a spare tyre and jack in a trunk that will barely hold your toothbrush and your birthday suit? Again, the answer is simple. You turn to Goodyear and their Eagle GSD run-flat tyres. Now you no longer need a jack, spare tyre or lug wrench. The engine itself is a 3.5-litre double overhead cam 24-valve unit that puts out 214 horsepower and 221 pounds-feet of torque. At first blush, you tend to want more power. However, examine the power-to-weight ratio and that view changes quickly. Throttle response is quick, the power band wide, and getting from rest to 100 kilometers an hour takes but 7.5 seconds. Truth told, power is not an issue. To get the appropriate sound out of the Prowler, Chrysler have baffles inside here. It gives it a nice raspy roar when you stand on it. The other noise you can hear is the fan for the transmission cooler. No room for it in the trunk, they stuck it under there. And no, it's not a parachute. Inside the Prowler you'll find bits and pieces from a variety of different vehicles. Obviously some from the LH vehicles, some from the minivan, even some from the Dodge Ram pickup. The one thing they did bring over and modify was the auto stick transmission. In the original version, it automatically upshifts. In other words, it's got a built-in self-preservation mode. In Prowler, because it's a hot rod style vehicle, it does not upshift. You, the driver, must remember to do it. The front suspension shows you the ingenuity I referred to earlier. What it is, double wishbones, but instead of being a commonplace system, what they've gone is to a push rod design, which places the springs and shocks inboard of the whole design. This means there's no nasty springs and shocks cluttering up the outside. This thing also enables this car to handle very tenaciously. The rear suspension is of the 4-link variety, comprising of 2 upper lateral links, 1 trailing link and a lower control arm. The rear springs and shocks were borrowed from Viper, but modified to suit Prowler, and both ends feature roll bars. From a handling perspective, the suspension obviously helps, but it's the ginormous 295/40 rear tyres that are mounted on 20-inch rims that contribute the most. Ride-wise, the Prowler is just too firm. Firm enough indeed to exaggerate the amount of body flex to the point where it can disrupt the overall road manners. Well, that's it for this edition of Test Drive. You know, some have suggested that this car was designed for those with a very fat wallet and a very small ego. And I'm sure there's some double entendre in there somewhere. However, I view this as the perfect vehicle to showcase your technical prowess. Perhaps the only drawback? When the weather turns like this, not only is it difficult to see out from the inside, this car also becomes decidedly squirrely.